Welcome back from lunch. I'm happy to introduce session 10, an update on the retread market. And we specifically got David Stevens for this post-lunch because you have an energy about you that'll keep everybody awake. So anyway, thanks you guys for coming back and looking forward to this session. David, take it away.
Thanks, Kyle. It is my pleasure to be back here again, speaking, and I really appreciate the CalRecycle guys giving us a chance to talk about something we're really passionate about, which is retreading. So I'm going to be both a moderator and speaker today. So despite what my wife thinks, I am a great multitasker. So we will take care of this today. I'm the managing director of TRIB, which is the Tire Retread and Repair Information Bureau. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that when I get into my presentation. But I wanted to introduce our other speakers and members of our organization. So thank you both for being members and supporting us. Following me, we have Daleen Sarat, who's the president and CEO of Tayak Tire, a California retreader and multi-service tire company here in California. So, and she's going to talk about the retreading process and some of the misconceptions about retreading, and then her perspective as a California retreader. And then following Daleen, we have Scott Bailey, who's the general manager of Premier Materials. And he's going to talk about an important component of retreading, which is the buffing process, and then how those buffings are moved on into their next phase of life. So without further ado, let me talk a little bit about retreading in the US. So retreading has a long history in the US, originally started in 1912. It is a massive, we say it's the largest remanufacturing sector in the US. It's 51,000 direct employees involved in the retreading sector, with almost 270,000 indirectly involved in retreading as well. We deliver over $28 billion in economic value to the US. This is a look at the retread plants in the US and their distribution. So as you can see, it's primarily truck and bus tire retreading with about 650 plants. Then we have off-the-road tires that are retreaded, about 18 plants that are doing that. Aircraft tire retreading, which some people are still surprised that there is aircraft retreading. And then some passenger tire retreading as well. And I think what's unique about the US market is that it is concentrated in a few hands. So the 10 largest retreaders in the US produce 62% of the retreads, all of the retreads in the US. And then this is just a quick look at the truck tire replacement market in the US. So the green columns are new commercial truck and bus tires that are replacement. So these are not the tires that come on OEM trucks and trailers when they're delivered to customers. This is the replacement market. And then the blue is the retread market. And so you can see the gap between new replacement truck tires and retreaded truck tires has continued to grow through 2022. And that is overwhelmingly being driven by low cost and also low quality imported tires. And with COVID and some of the duties taking place that are on Chinese truck and bus tires, we've seen that gap start to come back down. The good news from a retreading standpoint in the US is that we have been fairly consistent and with a slight growth curve over the last several years. And we think that 2024, we will have a little bit of growth in retreading in the US as well. Those figures are rounded up, so it sort of looks like we've been at 16 million for the last few years, but there has been slight growth. So we're here to talk about sustainability and the environmental benefits of retreading, but cost has always been the biggest component of retreading. And it's not just the initial cost, it is the long-term cost as well. So US trucking companies in the US save over $1 billion every year just by utilizing retreading. A retreaded tire compared to an equivalent quality new tire, it costs about 30 to 50% less than that new tire. And if you think about that, and then that tire can be retreaded 2, 3. If you're in a waste fleet, we're talking about 7 times that you can retread that tire. So you compound those savings, and you're talking about 500% more mileage than you could get with a single low-cost tire. And this is the issue that we have with a lot of people that are buying tires. These smaller fleets and these individual owner operators, when they need to replace a tire, they grab in, they go into their pocket and they're like, well, how much money do I have? What can I buy? And oftentimes it's a choice between a really cheap and a low quality imported tire or a quality retreaded tire. And they will sometimes make the decision to purchase that new tire, which is going against their own economic self-interest, because that cheap tire is not going to last as long, it's not going to run as many miles, and it can't be retreaded. So they can't take that tire to a retreader and either get a casing credit for it or have it be retreaded. So it's basically a one and done tire, which I think is criminal, right? Because those tires in truck and bus tires, I don't think a single truck and bus tire should be sold in the US unless it comes with a retread warranty. Because you talk about increasing the amount of tires that are going in a landfill or the recycling stream, again, to me, that's criminal. But fortunately, the big fleets know that retreading pays. So 87% of fleets in the US that have 100 or more trucks, they utilize retreads in their operation. And they do that because then these guys are testing, right? They're tracking every single bit of the costs of their operation, and they don't know down to a fraction of a penny that retreads pay for them. And this is UPS, FedEx, everybody that needs time-sensitive operations without any issues of reliability and performance, and they're all using retreads. So I want to give you a very specific example. This is a fleet who worked with one of the major manufacturers in the US, and they said, we want to increase our ratio of retreaded tires, and we want to see what sort of impact that will have. So this is going back a few years, but in 2018, they bought 12,000 new tires and 27,000 retreaded tires in their operation. So their retread to new ratio was 2.2 to 1. They said, in 2019, we want to shift those numbers. So they worked with their partner and figured out how they could do that. So they only bought 9,000 new tires, replacement tires, in 2019. They upped their retread purchases to 34,000. So it's a 3.81 to 1 ratio. For this one fleet, and those are pretty big numbers in terms of tires purchased, but they saved over $4 million. And they saved 1.5 million kilograms of CO2. They saved 237,000 gallons of oil, and they kept 18,000 tires out of landfill. So if you think if we could replicate those results in terms of increasing retread ratio among other similarly sized fleets or all of the fleets in the US, those numbers are pretty incredible in terms of economic impact and environmental impact. So I know Daylene's going to talk a little bit about one of those misconceptions about retreading, but this is often, we always hear like, oh, I would never use retreads. Well, what's the issue? Well, they come apart, and it's just simply not true. And there have been multiple studies, both at the federal level and multiple state studies, that have looked at tires, commercial truck tires, and every single one of those studies has come out and said retreaded tires are not the cause of rubber on the roads. And those state studies in Arizona and Virginia actually came out after they did their studies, and they said, you know what, as a state, we should be buying more retreaded tires because of the environmental impact and the economic impact. So, that myth and misconception about performance and reliability should just be put to rest. So where are retreads used? I think people are still surprised to learn that school buses, every single day that they're transporting millions of kids to and from school, they're running on retreads. And if you think that if school districts had to buy all new tires, the cost to the school districts that would come from that are massive. Fire trucks, ambulances, emergency vehicles, aircraft tires. 80% of the commercial aircraft tires that are commercial aircraft that are taking off and landing are doing so on retreaded tires. And those tires can be retreaded on average 11 times. So if you think about the forces and the speed with which those tires are undergoing on takeoff and landing, you shouldn't have any concerns about retreading. I mentioned the waste industry, enthusiast 4x4 off-road in the passenger segment, and obviously the OTR and construction and mining are massive users of retreaded tires. If you think about, one of those tires costing six figures and then being able to save 50% of that through retreading and just the environmental savings that go along with that. I mean, seeing those tire piles in some of the presentations yesterday, and I know that some of the mines, if they have a problem with the tire, they pull it off and they just throw it in the mine. And that kills me. That kills me. So, a number of our members that retread OTR tires are great partners for the commercial construction industry and mining industries, and we would love to see that continue to grow. So I wanted to shift a little bit to sustainability now. I've talked about it, but the major tire manufacturers are designing their casing specifically to be retreaded. So all those, compounds, the tread designs, the casing design, they're designing it to be retreaded multiple times, and they're providing warranties for that. So again, my issue is with those low-cost, low-quality tires that come in that provide no retread guarantees. And so they can't be retreaded. So 70% of the value of the tire itself is in the casing. And successful trucking fleets value those casings and those tires as investments instead of expense. So what do you do with an investment? You care for it. You make sure it's repaired properly. You make sure it's inflated properly. You manage it. If it's an expense, you just throw it on the truck and forget about it. And that's not what we should be doing. I'm going to talk through some of the figures. I'll just show you. So this is in the U.S. Here's retreading truck and bus tires, our environmental impact in the U.S. last year. 343 million gallons of oil saved in the manufacturing process, 663 million pounds of landfill diversion, enough energy savings through the retreading process to power over 1 million homes for a year, and we decreased tire waste by 473 million pounds. So with 16 million retreads last year, that's the impact we could have. Again, imagine if we could grow those numbers more. So one of the things that we've done is tried to be able to show people what they could save from an environmental standpoint by creating an environmental calculator on our website. So and it's a very simple and straightforward one, and it's just you put in the number of retreaded tires you've purchased, and it'll tell you how many gallons of oil you saved, how many pounds of waste you've diverted, and how many homes that you have powered through your use of retreaded tires. Retreaders themselves are very environmentally focused. This is another example. This is a UK retreader who is a very forward-thinking, environmentally conscious retreader, and they've also created for their customers a carbon calculator. So you can select your very specific tire size that you're buying with them, the quantity that you've done, and they will give you a report on the carbon emission savings that you've generated through using them. One of our Canadian members, Cal Tire, has what they call a MAPLE program for their OTR and mining and construction companies. And they've done that life cycle analysis of all of their manufacturing operations, and they give their customers a certificate at the end of the year that says, you retreaded X number of tires with us, here's how much carbon emission savings that you've saved through us. And their customers are the ones that were asking them for it because they have sustainability targets that they have to hit. And so they came to Cal and said, how can you help us quantify what we're saving? Because we need to roll it up into our corporate reports as well. Trib talks about environmental benefits of retreading all the time. We produce videos. So if you go to our website, there's a great video that talks about all of the various aspects of the environmental benefits of retreading. Every year at Earth Day, we do massive social media campaigns and videos as well to help educate people. We're fortunate enough to work with Denise Kennedy and DK Enterprises and CalRecycle on a program to help educate people in fleets and public fleets and government fleets about the benefits of retreading. So a few years ago, we had a $250,000 retread services contract in California, and our overriding objective was to support CalRecycle and their tire market development goals, mainly through education, training, materials that we provided, trying to lift the amount of retreading in the state. So some of the things that we did, we produced a choosing retreads for your fleet brochure. So providing all the benefits of retreading, and it's both online and in print format. It's something that we still distribute through the TRIB website today. We produced a brand new video called Retread's Work, which helps explain the process and explains the benefits as well for anybody that might be considering. And then we did a whole series of webinars as well. So this was in the middle of COVID. We had initially hoped to do in-person plant tours, but I think it worked better for us because we got greater attendance, not only in the state of California, but throughout the rest of the country, and even some international people who got to go through a plant, see the retread process, and ask questions of these individual plant operators about the process. And I think that's the single easiest way to convince somebody to try retreading. If you go into a plant and see how it's done, you can understand that it's a technologically sophisticated process. It's not what you often see on YouTube videos where some guy is saying, oh yeah, they just glued a new tread on this old tread and that's why they fall apart. It's just simply not the case, which I'm sure Daleen can tell you a lot more about. So Daleen is going to talk about the process of retreading as it exists today, and I want you to keep that in mind as I talk through a couple of things that are happening in the future for retreading. So everybody's talking about AI, right? What an amazing tool in a lot of different ways. Well, there's a great opportunity for AI in retreading. We use an inspection process called chirography, where we can look inside a tire casing and we can see if there's damage that is invisible to the naked eye that would potentially reject that tire from going into retreading. You can see the image that this gentleman is looking at, and you still have to have a human that interprets those images. But one of the great use cases, early use cases of AI is cancer detection. So if AI is looking at images, scans of the human body, and it is better than humans at detecting potential cancer and also has lower rates of false positives, why couldn't we use that in retreading? Virtual plant tours. So not just a video itself, but you can walk through a plant and operate the equipment, see what it's all about, move around within this virtual environment so you can really play around with it. Robotics and automation are becoming an increasingly important part of retreading. As with many industries, it's a struggle for our members to find and keep and train employees. And so if there's an opportunity for robotics and automation, you improve the quality and you also sort of help you with some of those human resource issues as well. Airless tires. So one of the reasons that tires fail is because of underinflation. And if you can take that air out of the tire through a non-pneumatic tire, I mean, Michelin has their Tweel product. The product on the right is a Goodyear product. And this is being used today in agricultural and lawnmower applications. And we have a couple of members that are successfully retreading those Tweels today. So, the hope is that there can be a longer life for these products and that they can be successfully retreaded as well, which we've proven with some of our members today. So this is my last word. Hopefully I've convinced you if you had any doubts about the benefits of retreading, but you're going to, anybody that's considering using them, you're going to save significant amounts of money. You're going to have an incredibly positive impact on the environment. And you're really taking advantage of the investments that the tire companies themselves have made in the casings. And so it's a waste of time if you're not retreading or buying a tire that can't be retreaded. And you're going to keep millions of tires out of the waste stream and out of landfills. So I did mention that we have a whole host of videos. I leave you with my contact information, our website, which has a ton of information. And then I wanted to specifically highlight the videos that we have so you can see the process itself and really learn about all other aspects of retreading. So thank you. So now I'm going to pass it over to Daleen, who's going to talk a little bit more about the retreading process and her experience.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. I want to thank Denise for inviting me to speak at this event. It's not something I get to do every day. I want to go over a little bit of the history of Tyack Tires. I started there in 1981. I started on the shop floor. I've worked in pretty much every capacity that there is in the shop. I had the opportunity in 2013 to purchase the business, and it was something I really wanted to do in my lifetime, and here I am today. The history, during World War II, the retread plants were hard to find, and they couldn't get lots of natural rubber, so they were trying to retread. There was an empty plant sitting in Oilfields Trucking in Bakersfield on South Union Avenue. Five Brothers, which is a large tire company down south, in conjunction with Bob Tyack's father, Jim Tyack, they moved that plant in and started retreading tires during the war. In 1952, Jim Tyack purchased the plant from Five Brothers and continued to run it until Bob purchased it in 1973, and then I purchased it from Bob in 2013. Obviously, there's been upgrades in the plant, machinery, and equipment, but that's kind of how it got started. We're the only retread plant in Kern County. There's one in Tulare. We are not one of the mega plants that Dave was talking about. We're a small retread plant. We want to be a quality over quantity plant. We're not a production plant. It makes a big difference what the quality of our product looks like compared to some of the other plants. And we have a mega bunch of customers that deal with us solely because of the quality of our product. We are located in Bakersfield. We are high on quality control, as I've mentioned. We guarantee weekly turnaround. If we go to a customer's site on Wednesday, we pick up what they need to get retreaded or take it off their vehicles. We get them retreaded in a week and get them back to them so that they don't have a lot of downtime on their tires or have to have a lot of extra retreads sitting on their shelves. Customers are guaranteed that the tires that they send to us come back to them. A lot of other places, they may or may not get their casings back. And if a person has a very high quality casing, they wish to get those back so they can utilize them in their fleet. We've always used Oliver Rubber, which is now currently owned by Michelin. In the beginning, when Michelin was bringing their retread to the United States, they actually had Oliver building some of that rubber for them at that time. Another way that we help our customers is we purchase casings from what we call casing traders. They buy them from individuals that don't retread. We purchase them from them, retread them, and get them back into the marketplace. This kind of goes over where we get our casings. When the casings get to our facility, they are marked with the customer's name, the retread design that they wish on them. We get them cleaned up, tagged, and store them in our warehouse and put them in line to get retreaded. Every casing is expected to determine its viability for retread. If we find something wrong with that casing that we do not think that it will hold up during its life, we reject it from the process. And the people at our shop are paid for the quality of product that they turn out, not by the number of tires they do in a day. So it is their process to make sure they turn out the best tire they can. The other thing is they're sitting in our shop. If there's a problem, we have them right there. We can go back and talk to them and say, why did this tire fail? So that we do not have a large amount of failures. The next step is to buff the tire and fix all the buzz outs. If there's some damage, like a rock is drilled into the tire or something of that nature, they can buzz that out, fill it in, and still retread the tire. This is showing some of the crown repair. The next step is to put the cushion on. Once the tire is buffed, it cannot be touched. If it is touched, it will cause a contamination and can cause the tire to fail. The cushion is applied, and then following that is the retread rubber. The tread design that the customer prefers, we try to match it with what will run best in their application. We do a lot of garbage truck fleets, and they use a lot heavier treaded rubber than a tire that's going to go on the highway use that's at speed for long periods of time. The tire is then placed in the curing envelope, and they also put rings on it to seal it, and then they are put in the chamber and cured for the appropriate length of time in the retread process, depending on the depth of the rubber. The deeper the rubber, the longer they have to cure. At the end of the process, we always do an inspection of the tire when it comes out of the chamber. Once in a while, one of them will create a bubble on the inside, or some other kind of failure will occur. And at that point, we can eliminate them so that they do not go out into the field and have a problem. The myths about retreading. I think Dave touched on it. Retreads are not safe, or not safe as new tires. Actually, they are. And if they are done with quality control, they are just as safe as a new tire and will outrun the Chinese or the less expensive tires overall. And we've had good luck with our customers running them. Second myth is the road is cluttered with retread rubber. That's not the case. Obviously, the rubber on the road comes from a lot of different sources, but mainly it's due to tires being underinflated or overloaded during the driving process, whether it be a new tire or a retread. If it does not have the appropriate air pressure in it, it can fail. Retreads do not have quality or safety requirements. That's incorrect as well. All retreads have to meet US DOT standards, and there's specific applications that they cannot be used in. They can actually be used in everything except the drive axle on passenger vehicles. So even an over-the-road truck, if they wished, and a retreader was willing to certify it, could be ran on the steer axle. That doesn't happen very often. We used to do quite a few of them for the garbage truck fleets and logging fleets that were on the logging fleets mostly off-road, but they've changed some of the tire positions and the tire sizes so that we can utilize most of them on drive now. Environmental impact. Retreaded tires contain 70% post-consumer material. So retreading is one of the biggest ways that the tire industry can help on using recycled product, especially in the trucking, medium truck market. And I want to say thank you for having me today, and I'll turn it over to the next gentleman.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Scott Bailey from Premier Materials, and I'm ecstatic to be up here with these folks, and you know, to kind of get to put a pretty fine point on it. I mean, what we need is more retreading, right? We can talk about every other aspect of it and what we're going to do when these things go end of life. But when you've got manufacturers that are putting the type of time and energy into creating casings of that quality, it's a shame for it to not be utilized and reborn through that retreading process. So that's not what I'm here to talk about, but it's awesome to be up on the dais with these folks. Premier Rubber and Premier Material is part of the E-Core family of businesses, and I know a bunch of people in the room have worked with Ecor and Premier over the years. We share a vision to rid the world of rubber waste. Now that's a big statement, and that's the way that Ecor thinks about things. But it really does start in working with folks in the retreading business and in and around tire reclamation and reclaiming those materials in order for us to be in a position to build the markets for the products that we're making out of the byproducts and recycling of this material. Ecor and Premier is not new. So been working with recycled rubber since the 90s, and we've come from the concept of recycling and fully, to most recently started to embrace the idea of full circularity in our processes. So, and it's not just naming a chief circularity officer, although she's doing a fantastic job to further think about what we can continue to do with the material in its end of second and third life. I love that. I forget. David was talking about the end of first life, and how we purpose the material after that first life. Well, that's great, and we're doing that obviously. But the concept of circularity, which aligns so beautifully with retreading, allows us to think about the further lives of that material when we're taking back a floor, or we're with Gary at Rubber Recovery, we're taking back a playground and repurposing that into the next set of lives for that material. That's really the way that we need to be thinking about things. I guess everyone has one of these slides. My marketing folks came up with this, so I can't take any credit for it. But they say Ecor is the company that you don't know that you know. So not everybody has Taylor Swift on their slide, but she on this current tour is dancing around on Ecor floor. I don't know if everybody in the room saw her, so something a little closer to home. Most of the Planet Fitnesses and the Hilton gym floors, if you stay in a Hilton property, are Ecor floors. But I couldn't resist showing off some of the some of those other ones. So as a business, this is the way that we're thinking about how we plug in to the problem of rubber waste. Obviously, there's a logistical component to it, and we'll talk about how that works in retreading in a second. But these things are heavy, they're everywhere, they're almost indestructible, and it's important to keep them sort of under control. Our goal is to take them, identify them, put them to their best use. And again, going back to the quality and the importance of retreading, the first best use of a tire is as a tire, right? If we can make sure that we take advantage of all of the engineering and all of the work that's been put into that casing and to the tread rubber that's being created and the processes that are put in place, that's the best case scenario. It's, it makes my job a little bit more difficult because, I've got to go find other sources, but that's the right way to do it, and that's what we're pushing for. So in addition to that, in addition to the, hundreds of millions of pounds of scrap tire that we're processing, what I'm showing here are the areas that we're taking those buffings, which is the byproduct from the retread process, and using that in a multitude of areas to benefit a bunch of different people. The nurse who works a 12-hour shift and stands on our floor has less fatigue on her bones because of the shape of the particle that's coming out of retreading. The kid that jumps from 8 feet off of the monkey bars and can, land on a rubber recovery playground, or a Surface America playground, or any of those folks doing that good work without hurting themselves. In part, that's happening because of the byproduct that's coming out of this retreading. So, obviously, we've got a bunch of other areas and industries that we're servicing and providing material for and collecting material to service. But those are a couple of good examples of ways we're developing products and working with industries to make sure that not only are we collecting the material, not only are we supporting the retreading process by providing collection and equipment, but then also doing things to better the lives of others. This gets into a little bit more detail. Obviously, earlier you heard about the changes in the turf market. Shock pad is one of those areas where there's an application and an ongoing use for these materials and products. Playground surfacing, obviously a big one. Bonded mulch is another one where I know we tend to talk about rubber mulch in a negative way. The bonded product, which is primarily a byproduct of the coarse material coming out of retreading with a binder associated with it, is not the same. We have the ability to add color to it. We can put it in places where it actually aids erosion and has a lot of beneficial properties. So again, there's the idea of finding the most beneficial use in order to support the tire being retreaded and the process continuing to happen. So I do want to take a second and I think the video is to just give you an idea of how we handle this material. I don't know what I need to do. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, so we had talked about the buffing process, but my company is in the buffing collection process. So we are, what we're seeing here is that grinding of the tire and the creation of the buffing that makes that sort of magical particle shape and size. And there it is, right? Looks a lot like mulch, but it's definitely, I don't know if it's going to stop at that. Oh, okay. We lost it. The nature of the relationship between a collector like myself and the retread plant is symbiotic. If my buffings collection system, which in a lot of cases sits in the plant, isn't working, we're shutting them down. If they don't have somewhere to go with the material, there's an economic headwind of $60 to $70 a ton to get rid of it when we're paying for the material and taking it away. So that type of relationship is critical, in addition to us working on the creation of the markets to put this material, which has phenomenal properties, to good use or best use. So I'm just going to leave you with another sort of thought process and vision around how we might be able to think about things, and really we want to find the best use for rubber that's out there. And again, I can't say it enough, the best use for a tire is as a tire. So more retreading. That's what I'm here preaching. So there's my contact information. Happy to get in touch if anybody's got buffings. that out of your way.
Okay, everybody, we're going to open up to Q&A. So raise a hand, we'll get you a mic. Moose, right over there.
Hi, this is for David. Do you have any statistics on the impact that the carcinogenic Japanese tire has to the recycling efforts?
That's a good question. It's one I've asked before, and especially of some of our recycling members. And we sort of looked at that specifically for, that was an approach with these low-cost tires. The way that they're being manufactured, the materials that they're using, is there a different impact to it? It's not something that we have looked at, and I've never come across a study like that, but it was always a question that we had. So.
I'll ask a quick question as Nick's moving over there to do this. I'll just say that this past year, I dug deep, bought some sweet Michelins for my 2002 Mini Cooper, and really enjoy them. Safe ride, it's great. Maybe as I look at those tires and maybe I transition to an EV, is there ever any future in passenger vehicle tire retreads?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely something that's being looked at by a lot of the manufacturers, and you're starting to see those manufacturers develop specific new tires for EV vehicles. The unique aspects of EVs with increased weight and increased torque means that those tires wear much faster. And so there are potential opportunities for retreading to have a resurgence in the passenger tire market with EVs. If you think about the way that a trucker drives, hundreds of thousands of miles over a very quick period of time versus a consumer that drives 12,000 miles, 20,000 miles, by the time those tires wear out and are ready to be retreaded, they might be aging out. But with an EV, those tires might wear much faster and would be successful candidates for retreading. So it's something that people are definitely looking at. So,
And as a material, it's essentially sorry. Am I in the wrong? I might be on the wrong. Sorry. I don't. This one? Yeah, all I was going to say is as a material, it's essentially the same, they're for our uses, for the situation that we're in to utilize it and to help to incent the process, it's the same as a truck tire. It's not the same, but I mean, for us it is.
yeah.
I had a question over here. I was reminded of this morning that I saw that Ecuador the entire country was blacked out. What's that got to do with tire retreading? I was approached by a Ecuadorian finance bank person 10 years ago, and she was proposing, they did an analysis of the total carbon emissions of not retreading tires and very inexpensive Chinese imports that were non-retreadable. And they calculated that the carbon emissions from not retreading the tires, if you looked at the entire life cycle of the tires, was more than it was going to cost to completely reconstruct the Ecuadorian electrical grid system. And she was trying to figure out how to get the Europeans to pay to rebuild their electrical grid system. So what's the point? I didn't see up here, and I think it would be really valuable if one of the industry groups did such a study for the United States and looked at the total carbon emissions if you had full market penetration of the retreading technologies wherever it's applicable, in a couple scenarios even going to the EVs, and put that number up against all the other things that are going on with regard to carbon reduction. I think the numbers of, number of this and that, trying to relate it to what people can conceive of, okay, that's not going to get the policymakers. I think you've got to really come up with an overall industry-wide market penetration carbon reduction, and I think it's going to be a very competitive number with a lot of other strategies that people are thinking about. And in terms of bang for the buck, I think it's going to be one of those ones that not only reduces carbon, but also reduces overall life cycle cost, which is what we call no-brainers in the business.
Couldn't agree more, and it's something we're working on. So stay tuned. And there, I mean, just sticking in Latin America for a minute, Chile as a country who has a handful of retreaders created an EPR law specifically for retreading, and they did a carbon emissions calculation for every single one of their retread plants, and then have created a carbon tax credit market based upon that for their retreaders. So there's all different sorts of models throughout the world in terms of like measuring that and capturing it, and we're looking at what we can do from an umbrella standpoint for the industry. So. Okay, well, there you go. They were probably talking to the same, might have been part of that same project.
We have one on virtual. What is the biggest holdup with retreading passenger tires?
Yeah, I think the whole, it's not really a holdup, but the evolution of retreading in the US with respect to passenger tire retreading is that there was an influx, a massive influx of Asian imported tires into the market. And the delta, the price delta between a retreaded passenger tire and a new passenger tire got so close together. The other problem was that there was such a proliferation of sizes, so that a retreader, if they wanted to retread passenger tires, they would have to have, 20, 50, how many molds and different sizes and tread designs that they might need. The commercial truck tire market in the US is dominated by, I think, don't quote me on these numbers, but 70% of the market is in 3 tire sizes. So it's easy to set up a plant to do commercial truck tire retreading based upon those numbers. And I think going back to my point about EVs, there's probably a limited number of sizes and tread patterns that go along with those that it might make it attractive for retreaders. They would have to narrowly focus on those types of tires and sizes. So it wasn't really a hurdle, it was just some market dynamics and just the proliferation of sizes that impacted passenger tire retreading.
Okay, I think that wraps up our Q&A. Really appreciate it. Let's give this panel a hand.